and was fully as moral as they were. No more, no less.
Are Hollywood's biggest stars hiding a truth that could destroy their legacy? Behind the glitz and glamour, studios erased identities, buried bloodlines, and forced icons to live double lives just to survive. Some vanished, some lied, some truths were never meant to surface. Subscribe now and watch till the end. These secrets are darker, stranger, and more shocking than anything Hollywood ever put on screen. Born in 1925 in Harlem, New York, Sammy Davis Jr. didn't just walk into show business. He tap danced straight through the front door, smashed the ceiling, and kept going. Singer, dancer, actor, comedian, if it involved a spotlight, chances were Sammy could dominate it with one eye closed and a grin wide enough to light up Las Vegas. But behind the non-stop charm and lightning-fast talent was a very careful balancing act. Sammy's father was African American. His mother, Elvira Sanchez, was Afro-Cuban. In mid-20th century America, that detail wasn't just personal, it was political, commercial, and potentially career-ending. So Sammy made a strategic move worthy of a master entertainer, he told the public. His mother was Puerto Rican. Not because he was ashamed, but because the 1960 music industry had a habit of punishing artists before even listening to the record. It wasn't cowardice. It was survival math. Fewer angry radio stations, more record sales, longer contracts. In a business that sold smiles but ran on prejudice, Sammy adjusted the label, not the talent, and the talent untouchable. While being selective about what he shared publicly, Sammy showed absolute clarity in his actions. He turned down performances at venues that enforced unfair policies, making it clear that his presence came with principles. Clubs in Miami Beach and Las Vegas had to change their rules if they wanted him on stage. Beyond entertainment, he openly supported movements for equality and stood alongside influential figures such as Martin Luther King Jr., even when doing so challenged those in power. Sammy Davis Jr. bent the truth in interviews. But on stage, in contracts, and in real life, he bent the system itself. He proved you could play the game just enough to stay in it and still change the rules while the audience applauded. Merle Oberon didn't just become a Hollywood star, she became Hollywood's most convincing mystery. To the public, she was a refined British actress with flawless manners and a perfectly simple backstory. Behind the scenes, however, her life read more like a screenplay packed with plot twists. Born in Bombay, British India, under the name Estelle Merle, O'Brien Thompson Oberon grew up far from the polished world she later claimed as her origin. Her family background was complex and global, shaped by cultures that the film industry of the time didn't quite know how to market. So Merle did what any ambitious star with limited options might do. She rewrote the script. In her official biography, Merle claimed she was born in Tasmania to European parents, explaining that her records were lost in a fire. The story was simple, believable, and exactly what Hollywood wanted. She presented it with confidence, and the industry accepted it without questions. Keeping the illusion alive required dedication worthy of an Oscar. When she moved to England, she even introduced her own mother as a household helper, all to protect the carefully crafted image. Early color film tests added extra pressure, forcing studios to get creative with lighting and makeup, proof that maintaining a flawless image sometimes took more work than the acting itself. And it worked. Merle Oberon became an international star, landing leading roles that would have otherwise remained out of reach. But success came with a cost. Living behind a curtain of half-truths meant always watching, always adjusting, always staying one step ahead of curiosity. Merle Oberon's story isn't just about fame. It's about reinvention, survival, and the quiet weight of carrying a secret while the world applauds the performance. Dolores del Rio didn't just cross borders, she rewrote the rules on who was allowed to shine on the world's biggest screens. Born in 1904 in Durango, Mexico, into a wealthy and aristocratic family, she came from a background that sounded like it belonged in a history book, not a silent movie studio. And Hollywood loved that, especially once it learned how to package it. When she arrived in the United States, American studios saw more than beauty. They saw a branding opportunity. Her name was shortened, polished, and turned into something elegant and easy to remember. Then came the marketing campaign. Dolores wasn't just an actress, she was presented as the graceful symbol of high Mexican society, a refined lady from an elite world far removed from everyday reality. This wasn't accidental. By emphasizing aristocracy, Hollywood avoided uncomfortable questions and made her image feel luxurious, distant, and safe for mainstream audiences. Her cultural background wasn't erased, but it was carefully edited. Certain details were highlighted, others softened, simplified, or left off the screen entirely. The result was an exotic elegance that felt glamorous without being complicated. And it worked beautifully. Dolores del Rio became the first major Latin American woman to achieve true crossover stardom in Hollywood's silent era. Audiences adored her poise, her presence, and the sense that she belonged to a world far more glamorous than their own. What makes her story even more remarkable is what came next. After conquering Hollywood, Dolores returned to Mexico and did it all over again, becoming a central figure in the golden age of Mexican cinema. Two industries, two countries, one carefully managed image, and a legacy that proved international stardom didn't have to belong to just one place. Freddie Washington had what Hollywood usually called a dream look, light skin, delicate features, and an appearance that constantly confused people. In fact, many assumed she could easily blend into any room and quietly take the easier path. Freddie knew that option existed. She simply refused to take it. Born in 1903 in Savannah, Georgia, Freddie rose during the electric energy of the Harlem Renaissance, sharing stages with icons and proving she had far more than just looks. But unlike many performers of her era, she made a bold decision early on. She would never pretend to be someone she wasn't, just to get better roles. In an industry obsessed with appearances, that choice was almost rebellious. Her most famous role came in Imitation of Life 1934, where she played a woman who chooses to hide her background to gain opportunity. Audiences loved the performance, but some critics missed the point entirely and accused Freddie of doing exactly what her character did. Freddie shut that down fast. She made it clear that honesty mattered more than approval and that talent didn't need a disguise. Behind the scenes, she became just as powerful as she was on screen. Freddie helped co-found the Negro Actors Guild of America, worked as an entertainment editor, and supported organizations fighting for fairness in the arts. And here's the twist that sums up the era perfectly. She was so light-skinned that studios sometimes asked her to wear makeup just to look right for certain roles. Freddie Washington chose identity over convenience, even when it limited her career. Hollywood didn't reward that choice, but history did. And that's what makes her story unforgettable. Ramon Novarro didn't just become Hollywood's favorite romantic fantasy. He became whatever Hollywood needed him to be, as long as it wasn't himself. Born in 1899 in Durango, Mexico, as José Ramón Gil Samaniego Novarro came from a wealthy and influential family with deep cultural roots. His mother even claimed lineage tied to Aztec nobility, making his background as layered as it was inconvenient for early Hollywood. When he arrived in the United States during the chaos of the Mexican Revolution, Novarro brought striking looks, undeniable charm, and screen presence that cameras adored. Hollywood noticed instantly. The first adjustment came quickly: the name. José Ramón Gil Samaniego became Ramon Novarro. Shorter, smoother, easier to sell, and just foreign enough to be intriguing. Despite being Mexican, Novarro was almost never allowed to play a Mexican character. Instead, he was endlessly cast as a vague, exotic outsider from nowhere in particular. A prince here, a mysterious nobleman there. Anything that sounded romantic but avoided real cultural specificity. Hollywood loved the fantasy, not the truth. Off-screen, the performance continued. Novarro lived under strict expectations, carefully protecting his private life in an era that demanded conformity above all else. When studio pressure pushed him toward a public image, he couldn't accept his career, quietly suffered. Ramon Novarro's legacy reveals the hidden cost of classic stardom, being celebrated for your allure while being denied the right to exist honestly. He was adored by millions, shaped by illusion, and remembered as proof that Hollywood often preferred mystery over authenticity, even when the truth was far more compelling. Raquel Welch wasn't just a movie star, she was a cultural phenomenon. With her unforgettable looks and magnetic screen presence, she became the ultimate symbol of glamour in the 1960s and 1970s. To the public, she was the definition of the all-American icon. But behind that carefully polished image was a story Hollywood preferred to keep quiet. Born in Chicago as Jo Raquel Tejada, Raquel came from a mixed heritage. Her father was a Bolivian engineer from La Paz, and her mother was of English descent. In another era, that background might have been celebrated. In classic Hollywood, it was something to manage. Studios worried that acknowledging her Bolivian roots would limit her roles, trapping her in narrow, predictable parts. So a decision was made, her name was changed, her background softened, and a new image was carefully constructed. Raquel Welch became a brand. Exotic enough to stand out, but familiar enough to sell. For decades, her public identity avoided any strong association with her Latin heritage, allowing her to dominate leading roles that might otherwise have been out of reach. It was a quiet compromise, one that brought fame, but came with its own cost. Later in her career, the story shifted. Raquel began to speak openly about her roots, expressing regret that she had once felt the need to downplay them. By embracing her full identity, she reframed her legacy, not just as a symbol of beauty, but as someone who navigated an unforgiving system and eventually claimed her truth. Raquel Welch's journey reveals how Hollywood shaped stars by controlling what could be seen and what had to stay hidden. Are there any classic Hollywood stories we haven't mentioned yet? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the secrets behind the spotlight. Dorothy Lamour didn't fit neatly into Hollywood's idea of what a star was supposed to look like, and that confusion became her brand. Known as the glamorous song queen and one of the most popular pinup girls of World War II, Lamour captivated audiences with an appearance that felt mysterious, alluring, and just different enough to stand out. Born with a richly blended Creole background that included Louisiana, French, Irish, and Spanish roots, her heritage reflected the cultural mix of New Orleans, where diversity was part of everyday life. In Hollywood, however, that same complexity caused hesitation. Studios didn't quite know where to place her, at least not at first. They figured it out quickly. Lamour's darker features and striking presence were repackaged into something the industry knew how to sell. She was cast again and again as the exotic woman playing island natives, foreign beauties, and mysterious outsiders. It worked. Audiences loved the image, even if it came from a narrow box. Dorothy herself rarely spoke about her ancestry. That silence wasn't accidental, it fit perfectly into Hollywood's strategy of polishing ambiguity while avoiding explanation. Her background wasn't denied, but it also wasn't explored. The industry embraced the look, not the story behind it. Her career became a perfect example of how Hollywood profited from mystery without granting full acceptance. Dorothy Lamour was celebrated, admired, and endlessly photographed, yet always presented as something slightly distant, slightly unreal. In the end, her legacy shows how classic Hollywood loved exotic stars, as long as they stayed just mysterious enough to remain comfortably undefined. Anthony Quinn didn't just portray many identities on screen, he quietly navigated one off-screen that Hollywood preferred to keep undefined. Born in 1915 in Chihuahua, Mexico, to parents of Mexican and Irish heritage shaped by revolutionary times, Quinn entered an industry that valued talent but demanded simplicity when it came to identity. Early in his career, Quinn made a subtle but strategic adjustment. He refined his name to make it more acceptable to studio executives. It wasn't about hiding who he was, it was about keeping doors from closing before he ever stepped inside. In classic Hollywood, clarity was dangerous. Ambiguity was marketable. That ambiguity became his greatest asset. With rugged features and an adaptable look, Quinn was cast as almost everything except his true background. One film, he was Greek, another Chinese, then a nameless foreign warrior from a faraway land. Hollywood embraced him as long as his heritage remained flexible and conveniently unspecific. The very thing he had to downplay helped fuel his success. His performances carried a raw intensity that felt authentic because it was. Quinn went on to win 2 Academy Awards and became one of the most respected actors of his generation, all while rarely being allowed to represent his own roots on screen. Anthony Quinn's career reveals a quiet truth about Hollywood's golden age survival, often meant being undefined. He didn't fight the system directly, he mastered it, proving that sometimes the most powerful identity is the one the industry can't quite label. I've been a lifelong Anthony Quinn fan since childhood. How about you? Drop a 1 in the comments if you admire him as much as I do. Susan Kohner's most famous role wasn't just acting, it was a mirror held up to Hollywood itself. Born in 1936, Kohner came from a richly mixed background. Her mother was Lupita Tovar, a celebrated Mexican film star, and her father was a Czech Jewish producer. In another industry, that heritage might have been proudly highlighted. In classic Hollywood, it quietly placed her in a gray area. That gray area became the key to her career-defining moment. In Imitation of Life, 1959, Susan Kohner portrayed Sarah Jane, a light-skinned woman who chooses to live as someone she is not in order to gain opportunity. The performance stunned audiences, earned her an Academy Award nomination, and won a Golden Globe. Ironically, the role was about concealment, and her casting was shaped by it. Many actresses were considered for the part, including black performers whose own lived experiences closely reflected the character's struggle. Yet Hollywood ultimately chose Kohner, whose ambiguous appearance allowed studios to explore the subject of identity without fully confronting their own casting boundaries. She was close enough to believability but safely distant from discomfort. Kohner herself was not portraying her own life, but her mixed heritage gave her an understanding of living between labels. Her success revealed a subtle truth of the era Hollywood preferred stories about identity, as long as those stories were filtered through faces that felt manageable. Susan Kohner's legacy isn't just about one unforgettable role. It's about how classic Hollywood used ambiguity as a tool, and how even stories about hidden identities were carefully controlled by the system telling them. Eartha Kitt didn't arrive in Hollywood with a safety net. She arrived with scars, strength, and a voice you couldn't ignore. Born in 1927 on a cotton plantation in South Carolina, her life began far from glamour. Her mother was of African and Cherokee descent, and her father was believed to be a white man, a reality that immediately placed Eartha in a world that didn't quite know where to put her. Her mixed background and light skin made her an outsider everywhere she turned. She faced rejection not only from society at large, but even from within her own family. Sent away to live with relatives in Harlem, young Eartha learned early that survival required reinvention. Harlem didn't just give her shelter, it gave her a stage. What followed was nothing short of electric. With a voice unlike anyone else's, a presence that demanded attention, and a personality that refused to blend in, Eartha Kitt carved out her own lane. She became an international star, proving that originality could break through barriers that conformity never could. But that independence came at a cost. The same fearlessness that powered her artistry also made her outspoken. Later in her career, she faced professional consequences for speaking openly about issues others avoided. Her journey from a rejected child of mixed heritage to a global icon is a testament to resilience. Eartha Kitt didn't succeed by fitting in. She succeeded by being unforgettable even when the world tried to silence her. Did her story touch your heart? Let us know by leaving an emoji in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing for more. John Gavin looked like Hollywood's definition of the perfect leading man, calm, confident, and effortlessly American. On screen, whether he was starring in Psycho or Spartacus, he fit so naturally into the role that few ever questioned where he came from. That was exactly the point. Born John Kohner, he was of Mexican and Irish heritage, a background that didn't align neatly with Hollywood's narrow vision of its male stars during the Golden Age. At a time when leading men were expected to embody a very specific version of American identity, Gavin made a calculated choice. He changed his surname, simplified his image, and quietly stepped into a role that extended far beyond the camera. The adjustment worked. With his heritage carefully kept out of the spotlight, John Gavin avoided being boxed into ethnic roles and instead gained access to a wider range of characters. He became the kind of actor studios trusted to represent strength, stability, and mainstream appeal. His success wasn't accidental, it was the result of understanding how the system worked and knowing exactly what it rewarded. What makes Gavin's story compelling is how invisible the compromise was. There was no dramatic reinvention, no public denial, just a smooth transition into an identity Hollywood was comfortable promoting. His career proves that for many classic stars of mixed background, success depended not on hiding talent, but on quietly editing the story behind it. John Gavin didn't just play the all-American hero, he mastered the art of becoming one. Carol Channing spent decades lighting up stages with her unmistakable voice, wide-eyed charm, and larger-than-life presence. From Gentlemen Prefer Blondes to Hello Dolly, she embodied pure Broadway joy. Yet behind that sparkling public image was a family truth she carried quietly for most of her life. At just 16 years old, Carol learned that her father, George Channing, was a light-skinned man of African-American heritage who had lived his life passing as white. Her family history was layered: an African-American grandmother, a German-American grandfather, and a father who kept his identity hidden to protect his career and family. In early 20th century America, this wasn't unusual, it was survival. The era was shaped by the so-called one-drop rule, a harsh social standard that reduced identity to a single detail and left little room for nuance. In entertainment, especially, image was everything. For someone like George Channing, blending in meant opportunity. Standing out meant risk. Carol kept this knowledge private for decades, only sharing it publicly in her memoir, Just Lucky I Guess, when she was 81 years old. And when she did, she didn't speak with shame, she spoke with pride. Carol believed her heritage contributed to her musicality, her rhythm, and her joy on stage. She openly rejected stereotypes, turning what had once been hidden into a source of personal strength. Her story reveals a quieter side of Hollywood's golden age. Many stars shined brightly while carrying untold histories. Carol Channing's legacy reminds us that behind the biggest smiles were often carefully kept secrets, and that embracing them, even late in life, can be its own kind of triumph. Dorothy Dandridge had the kind of beauty Hollywood loved to admire, and the kind of background Hollywood didn't quite know how to handle. With her luminous presence, copper-toned skin, and elegant features, she looked like a star the moment she stepped on screen. And in 1954, she made history by becoming the first Black woman nominated for a Best Actress Academy Award for her unforgettable performance in Carmen Jones. But behind that milestone was a complicated reality. Dorothy was born to parents of mixed heritage, a background that placed her in a strange middle space within classic Hollywood. She was often labeled as acceptable, passable, or marketable, yet never fully embraced. Too different for some roles, too constrained for others, she lived between categories that the industry refused to redefine. Hollywood loved her image, but not her possibilities. She was frequently cast in narrowly defined roles, even as audiences responded to her depth and charisma. Carmen Jones was groundbreaking, precisely because Dorothy portrayed a woman who was confident, passionate, independent, and undeniably desirable, a sharp departure from the limited portrayals usually offered at the time. Despite her success, Dorothy understood the limits placed around her. She once admitted that full acceptance remained just out of reach, even when she met every expectation placed before her. Her appearance may have opened doors, but it didn't erase the invisible boundaries that shaped her career. Dorothy Dandridge's story reveals a hard truth about Hollywood's golden age: visibility did not equal freedom. She broke barriers, but she also exposed how tightly controlled success could be, especially for stars whose identities didn't fit neatly into the roles written for them. Lena Horne didn't just walk into Hollywood's golden age. She stepped into a maze of expectations, contradictions, and carefully drawn lines. Born in Brooklyn to a family with African American, European American, and Native American roots, Lena came from a background that was educated, accomplished, and confident. But Hollywood was less interested in who she was than in what category it could place her in. With her striking beauty and smooth magnetic voice, studios knew they had something special. The problem was deciding how to sell it. Hollywood wanted her talent, but hesitated to let her fully exist as herself on screen, especially in leading or romantic roles. The industry feared challenging audience comfort zones, so it offered Lena a narrow set of options, none of them satisfying. At the time, performers with mixed backgrounds were often pushed into extremes. They could accept limiting roles or attempt to blend into something more acceptable. Studios tried a different approach with Lena. They reshaped her image. In early films like Panama Hattie, she was presented as ethnically ambiguous, even portrayed as Latina with makeup and styling carefully adjusted to soften how audiences perceived her. Lena saw through it immediately, and she didn't like it. She famously remarked that her life had become a series of attempts to give her an image rather than letting her simply be herself. That frustration fueled a lifelong struggle for control over her identity. As her career progressed and her confidence grew, Lena reclaimed that control. She embraced her background on her own terms, choosing when and how to present herself. What once felt like erasure became something she could navigate with intention. Lena Horne's experience reveals the golden cage of classic Hollywood. Even extraordinary talent could be boxed, relabeled, and reshaped. Her legacy endures not just because of her voice or beauty, but because she refused to let the industry have the final word on who she was. Rita Hayworth was destined to become one of Hollywood's biggest stars, just not as the woman she was born to be. She entered the world in Brooklyn as Margarita Carmen Cancino, the daughter of a Spanish flamenco dancer from Seville and an Irish-American Ziegfeld showgirl. Her background was rich, vibrant, and unmistakably multicultural. Hollywood's reaction: great talent, wrong packaging. Early in her career, billed as Rita Cancino Studios leaned hard into her Spanish heritage. Her hair was darkened, her skin shaded, and her roles carefully selected to emphasize an exotic image that felt marketable but limiting. She was cast often but narrowly admired, yet boxed in. Then Hollywood changed its mind. Exotic was out. All-American was in. What followed was one of the most extreme makeovers in film history. Margarita's jet black hair was dyed a fiery red. Her hairline was altered. Her name was changed. The studios erased one identity and replaced it with another, transforming her into Rita Hayworth, the ultimate American screen goddess of the 1940s. The strategy worked flawlessly. Rita became a global sensation, a symbol of glamour and desire. But behind the scenes, the transformation came at a cost. The woman audiences adored often felt disconnected from the person in the mirror. Hollywood had built her image with precision, but at the expense of authenticity. Rita's story exposes a harsh truth about classic Hollywood identity: was flexible as long as it sold. Her Spanish roots were first exaggerated, then quietly erased, depending on what the market demanded. Even today, many fans are unaware of where she truly came from. Rita Hayworth didn't just star in Hollywood's golden age. She embodied its contradictions, proving that fame could be manufactured, but identity was far harder to rewrite. Linda Darnell was marketed as the picture-perfect American beauty: flawless skin, soft features, and a look that seemed to belong on a postcard from classic Hollywood. Born in 1923 in Texas, she rose to stardom in the 1940s as one of the era's most admired actresses. To the public, her image was simple and reassuring. Behind the scenes, it was carefully edited. Linda came from a family with Mexican roots, a detail that studios quietly kept out of press releases and fan magazines. Early in her career, that background nearly defined her future. Her appearance led studios to test her in so-called ethnic roles, parts that often came with narrow expectations and limited growth. Hollywood had a habit of deciding where an actress belonged before she ever spoke a line. Rather than boxing her in studios, did the opposite. They erased the association entirely. Her image was polished, simplified, and presented as unmistakably American. No public statements, no dramatic denials, just silence. And it worked. Audiences embraced Linda Darnell as a leading lady without ever knowing the full story. This wasn't deception in the loud, theatrical sense. It was something quieter, a kind of passive passing. By saying nothing, Linda fit perfectly into Hollywood's preferred image of its stars, gaining access to roles that might have otherwise remained out of reach. Her career reveals one of the subtler realities of Hollywood's golden age. Sometimes success didn't require changing who you were, only choosing which parts of yourself the world was allowed to see. Linda Darnell became a star not by rewriting her past, but by letting the industry decide which chapters could stay closed. And that silence, carefully maintained, helped define both her fame and the system that created it. Linda Darnell's story reminds us that in Hollywood's golden age, silence could be as powerful as fame. Behind the flawless images and unforgettable performances were lives carefully edited to fit an unforgiving system. And if so many stories remained hidden for decades, how many more are still waiting to be told? And as the curtain falls, one thing is clear. Hollywood's golden age wasn't built on fairy tales, but on secrets, sacrifices, and survival. Behind every flawless smile was a truth carefully buried, rewritten, or erased so the show could go on. Fame didn't come free, and honesty was often the highest price to pay. Now we want to hear from you. Which star surprised you the most or earned your respect in a whole new way? Drop their name in the comments below. And if these hidden stories changed how you see old Hollywood, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us, because the real drama was never just on the screen.